Hello and welcome back. So last time we looked at how you can add images and text to your scene, but also the caveats of doing so within Premiere Pro. So like I kind of hinted at, probably best not using Premiere Pro, or if you are going to be adding text or images into your scene, to use a similar method that we used for our nadir image. Creating a kind of transparent overlay would probably be the best way if you're used to using Premiere Pro. But I would probably stick to After Effects for tracking text and images in our scene, just because it just gives you that more creative freedom and a kind of better overall look. So in this video we're going to be looking at some transitional effects between scenes that we can explore. Again, I haven't done much to this, I haven't really done anything since the last video, but we have our two clips here, and what I want to do is kind of give the user an indication or hint of either where to look or what's coming up next. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use a kind of planet sphere transition effect, otherwise known within Premiere Pro as the Mobius Zoom. So the Mobius Zoom is a video transition. So under Effects we go to Video Transitions and we go to Immersive Video, and we have this one here called Mobius Zoom. Now there are other VR effects, and again I'd encourage you to play about and just see what they all do. I'm not going to go through all of them, I'm going to literally just focus on one today just to kind of get across the concept. But again, play about with everything that you see. This is a kind of experimentation kind of course or series, so I'm not going to kind of say do as I say, repeat what I do kind of thing. This is very much up to interpretation. But I'm just going to use the Mobius Zoom and I'm going to drag this between my two clips here. And I'm just going to zoom in just a bit just so I can highlight this a bit clearer. So what this is if I was to scroll, let's say to here, you can see we've got this kind of portal starting to open up in our scene. This portal here is the next video clip, or the first frame of our next video clip. And what we can use this for is creating these kind of like spheres of teleportation. So if you had a kind of tour where you're going through a building, a site or a space where you've got kind of know where the next point of interest is going to be, you could actually position these spheres at where the next orientational camera is going to be. It just helps the user kind of reorientate themselves, get them prepared for what's coming next, so they're not just suddenly dropped from one space to another. You can also use this as a kind of way to orientate the user's perspective. So if they're looking straight on in one scene and then they get directed to look at the sphere, they will then be aware of which orientation they're going to be looking at in the next scene, because they can kind of preview it within the sphere. So there's a few things we can do with the Mobius Zoom. So if I select the Mobius Zoom transition down here, you'll notice that we have a few little options. We can show actual scenes, which just gives us a kind of preview of the two scenes overlapping, which isn't going to really add anything. What we're looking though is at the properties of this effect. So we have our zoom in, zoom out level. So that is how much it's going to kind of go warp the between our two scenes. So as the transition happens, if we up our zoom out level, our first scene is going to kind of distort heavily. We just go to VR view to show you, so we can sort of already see it zooming out and not looking quite right, so I'm going to keep that at 0. Our zoom in level likewise does the same, but within our sphere or our next scene. So we could actually keyframe it kind of going out and going in, let's say 1 or 2 or whatever, or 6. And then once we get to a new scene, we're kind of at the right level of zoom. I'm going to just reset that value to 10, so the default value by the look of it is 10. We have our point of interest. So the point of interest will be, in this case, where the Mobius Zoom is positioned in our scene. So first value is our X. Let me just come back at this. There we go. So I can use the point of interest to reposition my sphere. So this is what I was saying, if you had a kind of tour for a space, we could position these spheres at the next point in the tour, or have them kind of as orbs of kind of hot spots almost within our scene. So if these two clips don't really flow properly together because they're completely two different locations, but let's say this scene here was actually inside the castle, I could position this sphere to be at the doorway of the castle, and that way it kind of says to me, okay, so now I'm going to be going this way, and it kind of, that sphere or preview kind of just helps the journey and the understanding for the user. I can also position the height as well, and again this will distort everything correctly. Another thing we can do is look at the feather. So at the moment you've got default of 0.10, so you've got this kind of feathering softness around the edges. If I turn that to 0, it becomes a harsh circle, or I can make that very feathered, so we're having a kind of portal opening up, and we could even overlay something on top of this to kind of emulate that effect more. But I'm quite happy with keeping it fairly as it is, to be honest with you. I can also stretch the length of my Mobius Zoom, so I can click on the beginning or end and drag, so I can increase or decrease the time it takes for this transition to happen. And what will happen is it will scale up from basically 0 up to 100% until our next scene is basically shown. Let me just mute my video clip there. There we go. So we have our transition going on here. If we combine this with spatial audio cues, or for example arrows that sort of say, you know, be prepared to look in this direction at certain points or just before this transition happens, it just helps guide the user that little bit more. And again, we want the experience to be enjoyable. We don't want it to be discomforting. We don't want it to be kind of anything that could cause nausea or feeling of unease, unless obviously that is your intended narrative. So again, play about with some of the effects. Some of these effects will work better than others. You can even try effects that aren't built for VR and just see what that does. And yeah, that's basically it. Again, Premiere Pro is what we're going to be using to just create a kind of cut of the film and footage. We'll be using After Effects to create the kind of visual overlays and, well, effects essentially, hence why the program's called After Effects. So, I've been Stephen Fisher, and remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you again in the next video where we'll start looking at actually exporting this out and preparing it for our After Effects workflow. Goodbye.